Great. So, very warm welcome to today's session there, everyone. Hope everybody's well today. So today, we're going to be going through an introduction to welfare benefits. So my name's Chris, and I'm going to be taking you through today's training. So, that's myself there. So this is our delivery team. So I'm the one on the right-hand side there. So that's myself. So myself and Gareth, we both run the training here at Society Matters. I'll tell you a little bit about Society Matters in a moment, just in regards to kind of what we do and the kind of great work we do there. So myself and Gareth, we both have backgrounds in social welfare, giving social welfare advice. So I have about 5 years experience working for Citizens Advice Gateshead. So during that time, gave advice to lots of different people within our local community on everything around welfare benefits, all the benefits that we're going to be talking about today. So I like to bring that experience to the courses that we run as well, putting those courses together, and of course bringing my own personal experiences to those as well. Right, okay, so this is what we are going to be running through today. So these are today's aims and learning objectives. So we're going to be going through an overview of the 16, yeah, that's right, 16 current welfare benefits being claimed in the UK at the moment. This includes universal credit and PIP. So like I say, a lot of benefits to get through today. We will get through all of them. What I'll do, I'll highlight some of the ones that are the sort of most common benefits, the ones that you'll probably see more often. But of course, if anybody has any questions about some of the other benefits, that will just kind of sort of go through, then of course just ask me as we are running there. We will have an opportunity at the end though for a bit of a Q&A, so if you want to save your questions for then, that's fair enough. So I'm going to be running through some of the eligibility and the criteria for each of those welfare benefits and the payments that apply to them. So again, this is really going to be more of an overview. So we'll go through an overview of the eligibility of that criteria. I've got a few links that I'll pop into the chat, which also kind of goes into what the kind of current rates are. Of course, a lot of those are going to change next year when it gets into April. But I'll drop a few links into the chat so everybody will be able to kind of see what the current rates are there as well. And I'll just run through some of the eligibility there. Also, we'll look at some of the factors that might affect those claims in the future. So as I mentioned, there are 16 current welfare benefits, but as some of you might be aware, because of managed migration, some of those older benefits are going to be getting phased out. Quite a few of them will be getting phased out towards the end of this year. So that figure of 16 is probably going to drop down to about 11 or 10 by the time we get to this year. But I'll mention which ones are going to be getting phased out as we run through them. And I probably won't mention too much about those because, like I said, we're not really going to be seeing them very, very much when it gets into next year, though. Deadline for that is sort of 2024, December 2024, that a lot of those would be getting phased out. Right, so a little bit of background on ourselves. So as mentioned before, we are Society Matters. So we are a trading subsidiary of Citizens Advice Gateshead. So we work very closely with Citizens Advice Gateshead. We deliver training to them as well. And quite a large proportion of the profits that we make through the training, what we make through the training, does go back into the charity. So they do go back into Citizens Advice Gateshead. It's very much there to help continue to support people within our local community, and of course to continue to fund the various projects that we have here as well. So some of the organizations I can see on the screen in front of you, these are just a few of the organizations that we are very proud to work alongside. Some of these organizations that we do work very closely with to develop training with as well, like bespoke training with too, that eventually we do roll out for everyone. So very, very proud to kind of work alongside these organizations there. Right, so this is today's plan. This is what we are going to be running through. So we are going to be going through means tested benefits, or what we mean when we talk about means tested benefits, and a few of those benefits that we'll kind of mention as well, and talk a little bit about that criteria. We're going to have a look at those non-means tested benefits as well, a little bit around statutory benefits, contributory benefits. We're going to talk about legacy benefits, so those benefits that are going to be getting phased out. We'll talk about universal credit in quite a bit of detail, and that should bring us to the end. And hopefully we'll have a little bit of time just at the end to go through a bit of a Q&A there as well. Right, and this is what we are going to be running through today. So we'll keep coming back to this screen, just give everybody a bit of an idea of what we've covered, like how far we have to go within today's session as well. So you will see this slide keep popping up as we do go through. Okay, so first of all, we're going to talk about means tested benefits there. So means tested benefits. So what are means tested benefits? Well, means tested benefits, essentially benefits available to people who can demonstrate that their income and their capital is below a certain level. So if your means are greater than your needs, so what we mean by your needs is the amount that the government estimates that you're able to live on, then the benefit itself could be reduced. In some cases, if it's over your income and your like the threshold for your capital, then it might not get paid at all. So the amount that you're entitled to can vary from person to person, because your income, your savings will all be looked at to see if they are low enough to qualify for that specific benefit. I'll bring up the benefits that we're going to be looking at. So these benefits, most of these benefits, when it comes to means tested benefits, are working age benefits, particularly universal credit, which is kind of the main sort of working age benefit that that people are claiming at the moment. Of course, pension credit is not a working age benefit, so you do have to be above pensionable age in order to receive that. But the other ones are means tested benefits. We'll look at those in a little bit more detail in a second. So when it comes to means tested benefits, it does have what we call a capital threshold. So there is what we call the upper capital limit. So for means tested benefits, if your capital is over £16,000, then you won't be able to qualify for any of these means tested benefits there. And once your savings do go over £6,000, then that amount will gradually start to reduce there. So those are primarily for those kind of working age benefits there. £6,000, that's what we call the lower capital limit. So most income below £6,000 for means tested benefits would generally be ignored. But essentially, if your capital is between the upper limit and the lower limit, it's sort of treated as generating like a monthly income essentially. So what do we mean when we say capital? So the kind of things that would be included would be savings, investments, lump sum payments, the value of any property or land that you don't sort of live in. So the home that you currently live in would not be classed as capital, but any like additional homes beyond that would be classed as capital. So if you live in the home that you own, then that's not going to be taken into account. So a lot of means tested benefits are quite underclaimed really at the moment. I think some clients maybe assume that they wouldn't be entitled to them. So I think it's really important that people have maybe a full benefit check done, which you can have done at places like Citizens Advice, or you can use a benefit calculator there. So I'll make sure we pop a link to a benefit calculator into the chat so everybody will be able to kind of see that, and feel free to access that if you need to there. So if we have a look at a few of these means tested benefits, so first of all, we have income-based job seekers allowance and income related employment and support allowance. So these are what we call legacy benefits. So with income-based job seekers allowance, you're not really going to be able to make a new claim for this after the end of this year. So really at the end of December 2024. So this is one of the benefits that is going to get phased out. Same sort of thing when it comes to income-related employment and support allowance. So income-related employment and support allowance, you do have a little bit more time with that one. So the government did state that It'll be sort of 2028 when that'll be completely phased out, although we are quite a bit ahead of schedule on that at the moment. So it's probably going to be looking more around about sort of 2025 when that's going to be phased out. So the kind of migration letters will be sent out probably in the middle of next year. Then at the end of 2025, we probably won't be seeing that benefit anymore. But those are benefits. They're kind of like the means tested part of job seekers allowance and employment and support allowance. It's only really kind of new style job seekers allowance and new style employment and support allowance that people can still currently make a claim for. They're not legacy benefits, so people will be able to claim those, and we'll look at those a little bit later on when we look at contributory benefits. But these ones, probably not going to see them much longer. Pension credits, on the other hand, of course, this is a benefit that is going to be ongoing. Now, it was previously quite an underclaimed benefit. I think I found my experience working at Citizens Advice. I think a lot of the older clients that we dealt with were maybe not like complete, not always, but like sometimes maybe less or maybe more reluctant to claim benefits. I think maybe for certain generations there's maybe more of a stigma attached, so it was quite underclaimed. But recently, some of you might have seen in the news that when it comes to winter fuel payments, you'd have to be claiming pension credits. That's one of the sort of bits of criteria in order to get those winter fuel payments. We did see quite a surge in people claiming pension credits. So it went from being quite an underclaimed benefit to now where a lot more people are looking to kind of claim this benefit. So with pension credit, so there's two parts to it. So we have guaranteed credit and we have savings credit. So guaranteed credit, so this is the part of pension credit which essentially tops up your weekly income to a minimum amount. So these could be people who maybe have like a reduced pension. So if you have over 10 years of contributions for a state pension, then you would be able to kind of sort of claim a state pension, but it will be reduced. You get a full new state pension if it's over 35 years of contributions. So if you have reduced state pension, then pension credit might be able to help sort of top that up essentially to that kind of minimum amount there, so to kind of make up that shortfall. So you might be able to claim pension credits for that. Saving credits, not as many people would be claiming that, so they're only available to people who have reached state pension age before the 6th of April 2016. Or if you're part of a couple and one of you did, then you might be able to receive that. There is that kind of mixed age rule when it comes to pension credits as well. So if you are a couple, and that means that, say, for example, if you and your partner have both reached state pension age, then you would be able to receive pension credits. But if you're in a mixed age couple where maybe one has reached state pension age but the other one hasn't, then you won't be able to claim to pension credits. Even that individual won't be able to claim pension credits until their partner has reached state pension age. Instead, then probably what you'd have to do is claim universal credit instead as a joint claim, which you would be able to do even if one of you has reached state pension age. Something that is quite controversial. I think it sometimes does lead to things like we have seen clients who are living apart so that their partner can claim pension credit, for example. So yeah, some crazy stuff going on around that as well. But yeah, we do have a couple of helpful links on pension credit. So there's a pension credit calculator and a link just in regards from Citizens Advice, gives you a little bit of a breakdown of what pension credits are. And we'll pop that into the chat there for everyone as well. So when it comes to housing benefits, so housing benefit, it's kind of classed as a legacy benefit. You can't really make a new claim for this unless you are over pensionable age, in which case you can't make a claim for universal credit, so you won't be able to get the housing element that comes with the universal credit. So you'd have to get housing benefit instead. Or if you're on sheltered accommodation, you could claim housing benefit. But other than that, it's kind of been phased out for everyone else there. With universal credit, now I won't go into any detail on universal credit right now because we do have a few slides towards the end where we'll go into a lot more detail on that. But universal credit, biggest shake-up to the welfare system really since the Second World War. It's the benefit that everyone's been, everybody on those old legacy benefits, the old benefit system, people are being moved on to it now. But yeah, we'll go into a lot more detail on what that is a little bit later on there. Okay, so that brings us on to non-means tested benefits there. So non-means tested benefits, essentially the polar opposite to means tested benefits. Doesn't matter if you've got, zero in the bank or £1 million in the bank, you might be eligible to claim these benefits there. And the reason for that is because most of these are sort of health related benefits. So we'll just have a little look at the benefits here. So again, as we can see, things like disability living allowance for children, personal independence payment, carers allowance, and industrial injuries disablement benefit there. So these are mostly health-related benefits. We can see that with these benefits, they are non-means tested, so it doesn't really take your income into account or any savings. Although with carers allowance, there is like an earnings threshold, so you can't be earning any more at the moment than £151 per week in order to qualify. So you might be a carer and working at the same time. That amount, again, anybody who saw the budget, is going to be going up next year to £196 a year. So bit of a lifeline to unpaid carers. We do have a lot of unpaid carers in the country at the moment, where they will be able to earn a little bit more and be a carer at the same time when that kicks in sort of April next year. So we'll just break down a few of these. So first of all, disability living allowance for children, so or DLA for children. So a parent can get these payments for a child if they have a medical condition or a disability that affects their sort of day-to-day life. So that could be maybe with their mobility, or could be through just essentially anything in regards to what they could do or what they can't do of a child of the same age who doesn't have that condition. So you can get higher payments for other benefits with this as well. So it's a qualifying benefit for child tax credits, housing benefit, universal credit. Of course, child tax credit, one of those legacy benefits that is going to get phased out within a couple of months, but certainly things like universal credit, it's a qualifying benefit for other payments on that as well. So something that might be worth looking at. It shouldn't affect any other income, any of the benefits that you all can receive. That goes with all kind of non-means tested benefits, really, or most non-means tested benefits. But it could mean that you'll get an increase on some of those benefits as well. So generally, I said, for children who have a disability, health condition that makes it difficult to get around or to to cope with their kind of day-to-day sort of activities. So with this as well, now if your child is terminally ill and not expected to live more than 12 months, then you could apply for this straight away, regardless of how long the child has had those difficulties. And you should automatically be getting like the higher rate of this benefit, if that is the case there. So best thing to do is speak to your medical professional or a doctor, fill out what we call an SR1 form. And this means that those payments will be able to be fast tracked there as well. So next we have personal independence payments. So personal independence payments, money for people who have extra care needs or mobility needs. So could be that there's sort of two components to this. So we have the daily living component and the mobility component. So somebody might be able to get one or the other, or potentially could get both of those payments. So again, PIP, it does have the sort of end of life rules with this as well. For anybody who does have a terminal illness or 12 months or less to live, they could get PIP at the daily living component at the highest rate, so the enhanced rate of PIP. And again, shouldn't have to kind of wait any length of time, should get that straight away. So with PIP, generally, I would say it's far from a perfect benefit, because we do have a lot of kind of long wait times to receive that benefit. So sometimes people are waiting for between maybe 4-6 months, sometimes potentially even longer. So there is quite a high demand sort of for this benefit there as well. But again, if you have a terminal illness, then you shouldn't have to wait those wait times, should get that really within kind of like a week or two. So it's assessed through a series of what we call descriptors. So you'll get like a 38-page, like quite a lengthy sort of 38-page form that you'd have to fill out. The assessors will have a look at that, and they'll be assessing you on things like being able to sort of cook and feed yourself, being able to kind of wash and bathe. It'll assess you on making budgetary decisions. So there's 12 descriptors in total that the assessor will look at in regards to what you can or can't do. 10 for your daily living and 2 for mobility. If you score between 8 and 11 points, then you would get the standard rate of either your mobility or your daily living. If you get 12 points or more, you would get the enhanced rates there. I'll pop a link into the chat on those PIP descriptors as well, so everybody will be able to have a look at those. Generally, they wouldn't be sent out with the form, but they wouldn't be at all. But I think it's helpful to have a look at them if you are claiming for PIP, because it'll give you an idea on how you're being assessed. So after filling out the form, there will be a face-to-face assessment that you'd have to go to, and they'll ask you questions kind of based on what you put on that form, and then you'll get a decision usually within kind of 4 to 6 months. It, again, can take quite a long time. Unfortunately, with PIP as well, a lot of decisions are quite unfairly turned down, and we do have to kind of challenge those decisions. Fortunately, there is quite a high success rate when we do challenge those decisions in general. But again, I've dealt with a lot of clients personally where we've put a PIP form in for them, they've gone through the assessment, and then for a reason they've been refused that payment. And sometimes it's quite baffling as to kind of why they refused it. Did have a client who had osteoarthritis. So they couldn't convey food or drink to their mouth, and part of those descriptors, the questions on the form asks about, can you kind of like feed yourself, cook a simple meal, that sort of thing, and they scored 0 on both of those. So we were working with our daughter on that. We had to challenge that decision, submitted some more medical evidence, and we managed to get that turned around. So they went from 0 to getting the enhanced rate of PIP. So just kind of goes to show, even if you think you've got a really good chance of getting it, doesn't always go that way, and sometimes we do have to challenge them, but we do have a very high success rate of challenging them, so it is kind of worth doing that. But we do find 1 in 4 people don't challenge a PIP decision because of the stress that goes into it, because you're waiting for months to get that initial decision, and then we don't know how many months it's going to take to kind of get that decision overturned. Quite often it can be maybe up to a year sometimes, from that initial decision to challenging it to getting that decision back. So a long time, I think, for people to wait. At the moment, they are looking into reforming PIP as well. Some of the stuff that we've heard about that, I think, is a little bit scary. I think there have been a lot of charities who have sort of challenged that. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what's going to happen with PIP there. So also we have carers allowance. So carers allowance, we did kind of briefly mention it just before. So carers allowance, one of those benefits now, if you reach over pensionable age, you won't be able to receive PIP anymore. Sorry, talking about tenants. So sorry, carers allowance. Sorry, is for people who, if you are like a carer, caring for somebody who has maybe is receiving PIP or DLA, or maybe like attendance allowance, for example, then they could potentially claim carers allowance for taking care of that person. So carers allowance, it is a benefit for people who do provide that kind of regular, substantial care. So you have to be providing care for somebody over 35 hours per week in order to qualify, and that person that you're caring for would have to be receive that qualifying benefit like PIP or attendance allowance or DLA. Now, there is that kind of earnings threshold, so you can't earn at the moment more than £151 per week. Of course, that is jumping up to £196 per week next year. But yeah, you would have to be kind of meeting that kind of threshold as well in order to qualify for carers allowance. But again, we do have a lot of unpaid carers in the country at the moment, so something that is vital, I think, for a lot of people to receive those payments. So we also have industrial injuries disablement benefit. So bit of a mouthful. I think it's just been designed so if for it be difficult for me to say for some reason, or I'll usually just say IIDB because it's much easier. So IIDB. So this is essentially if maybe you've been injured in an accident caused by your workplace. So it could be example, you damage your leg from falling off a ladder, you have like maybe post-traumatic stress disorder, or developed a list of a number of medical conditions, then yeah, potentially you might be able to receive some payments. So there is a link on industrial injuries disablement benefit that will just pop into the chat for everyone to have a look at there as well, if anyone's interested. So in order to qualify, you do have to be a paid employee, or you could be an apprentice, or you could even be on a government-approved training scheme while you were injured, or an agency worker who's paid national insurance through your pay slip. So what will happen is an examiner will have to assess you to decide if you're on a scale between 1 to 100% disabled. So if you're, for example, up to sort of 20% disabled, then you should be able to receive something all the way up to 100%. So it does kind of vary. So, could be 20% if you've lost a finger or thumb on your right hand. 100% would be things like if you've lost sight or hearing because of an incident or an accident that's happened at work. There's about 70 diseases altogether that it covers. Of course, we don't have time to go through all of them, but things like asthma, chronic bronchitis or emphysema, COPD, deafness, osteoarthritis of the knee in coal miners was quite common. Asbestos-related illnesses as well would all be covered under IIDB there. Okay, but again, gives a bit more information on that link that's popped into the chat there. Right, so that brings us on to statutory benefits. So I think quite a lot of people would have some familiarity with statutory benefits, so we probably won't go into a huge amount of detail on these. Of course, anyone who's looked at the budget recently as well might have seen that they're going to be sort of changing how statutory sick pay works, part of the government's employment bill that was discussed. That's big part of their kind of the new government's manifesto there. So we'll talk a little bit about how that's changing as well. So statutory benefits, essentially benefits available to people to help them while they're in employment. So if they're off work due to sickness, maternity leave, paternity leave, then yeah, potentially they will be able to receive these statutory benefits there. So, so these are the main ones. So we have statutory sick pay, statutory maternity pay, statutory paternity pay, and statutory adoption pay. So essentially, you have to be classed as an employee. So they're not available to people who are self-employed, and you have to be meeting a certain earnings threshold at the moment as well. So you must be earning, it must be £123 per week or more before tax. Now that is something when it comes to statutory sick pay is going to be sort of changing quite soon as well. They are going to be removing that earnings limit. So some of the other changes around statutory sick pay. So first of all, removing the lower earnings limit of £123 per week altogether. Meaning that statutory sick pay will apply to people on lower incomes now, and again, something that is going to be quite helpful for those people. Also, now at the moment, we do currently have some of the lowest rates when it comes to sickness benefits in Europe, according to a report by the Fabian Society. I think that was back in 2023. So statutory sick pay is worth just 16% of average weekly earnings at the moment. But one of the things that they are going to be doing is they're going to be removing the waiting period. So it's currently 4 days. You have to be sick to ill to work for 4 days in a row before statutory sick pay would apply. They are going to be removing that as well. So basically, on day one of the illness, you should be entitled to receive this, and that'll come into effect. It won't be until 2026, unfortunately. So at the moment, that's not coming in, but something that was kind of discussed and introduced recently with that new employment rights bill there. But at the moment, yep, there is that average £123 a week in order to qualify. Now, and again, you do have to be sick for more than 4 days in a row. So you can get up to £116.75 per week statutory sick pay if you're too ill to work. It is paid by your employer for up to 28 weeks, but if you have like additional sick pay, like a sick pay scheme at work, then could get a little bit more, could get additional amounts. If it's a long-term illness and your sick pay is coming to an end, then you might be able to claim new style employment and support allowance, which we'll have a look at in a moment there. So we also have a statutory maternity pay. So statutory maternity pay is paid up to 39 weeks, could be up to a year with additional maternity pay there as well. It covers 90% of your average weekly earnings before tax for the first 6 weeks, and then £184.03 or 90% of your average weekly earnings for the next 33 weeks, and it's going to be whichever one of those is lower. So statutory maternity pay, so it is paid in the same way as your wages. So for example, it could be monthly, could be weekly there as well. You have to have worked at least 26 weeks, again, earning £123 per week into the qualifying week of childbirth. So that's the 15th week before childbirth there. Statutory paternity pay. So this is kind of again a weekly rate. So it's the same sort of thing. It's £184.03 or 90% of your average weekly earnings, whichever is lower. While you're sort of taking care of your partner, spend time with the baby while they're on maternity leave there as well. But this is only kind of for 2 weeks there. So there's also shared parental pay as well. So this is if you and your partner will be able to get shared parental pay and statutory shared parental pay if you're having a baby, using a surrogate to have a baby, adopting a child, or fostering a child who you're planning to adopt there as well. Right, so that brings us on to contributory benefits there. So for contributory benefits, so as well as meeting the eligibility criteria for each of those benefits, you must have paid sufficient national insurance contributions in order to qualify. These are what we call your contributory conditions. Now, best thing to do is to kind of check your national insurance contributions. You can do that at gov.uk. I think we do have a link that will pop into the chat where you can check your national insurance contributions there as well, and we'll have a look at some of those contributory benefits. So again, main sort of thing, have to pay enough national insurance contributions. So we have maternity allowance. So generally people who don't qualify for statutory maternity pay could potentially receive maternity allowance there. We have contributory based and new style job seekers allowance. So contributory based job seekers allowance is one of those legacy benefits that's getting phased out, but it's pretty much the same, almost exactly the same as new style job seekers allowance anyway. So this is something that you will still be able to continue receiving. So new style job seekers allowance and also new style employment and support allowance, which isn't listed on the slide, but that's also is something that goes hand in hand with that as well. So probably going to be more relevant to people who can't claim universal credit. I think most people will be claiming universal credit instead of job seekers allowance or employment and support allowance. It's been overtaken by most of those benefits there. Could be that maybe because on universal credit, your savings do have to be below £16,000. That's not a condition of the sort of contributory based and the new style job seekers allowance and employment and support allowance. So if your savings are over £16,000, you could still potentially claim the new style versions of those benefits there. Also, we have bereavement benefits, and of course, your basic or your new state pension would fall under this as well. So you have over 35 years of contributions, you'd get your full new state pension. Over 10 years, you would get like a reduced state pension for that as well. Again, you can check your contributions that link that we dropped into the chat there as well. I do have a couple of links, I believe, as well. See if we can drop that in on New Style Job Seekers Allowance and New Style Employment and Support Allowance, if anybody wants to have a little further look into those as well there. Right, so that brings us quite nicely onto legacy benefits. So these are the benefits that are getting phased out, and most of them we won't be really be seeing these when it gets to sort of December 2024. So we basically just got kind of like a couple of months before they will be phased out completely. So legacy benefits, so these are kind of left over from the old benefit system. I'll just bring up the benefits that we're talking about there. So these are just a few example of a few of these. So we have income-based job seekers allowance, and we also have income-based employment and support allowance that we looked at before. We have income support. We have housing benefit, we have child tax credit, and we also have working tax credit as well there. So both of those kind of tax credits fall under that. So essentially kind of 6 legacy benefits in total, and they are being phased out, and they're going to be essentially turned into the 6 elements of universal credit, which we'll have a look at in a moment. We're going to have a look at universal credit quite soon. So I think really important when we talk about legacy benefits, some people are still claiming them. They will be able to claim them up until they're told to kind of move across. And this is through a process called managed migration. So with managed migration, what will happen is, and they were kind of dealing with this kind of region by region, sort of parts of the country where somebody would receive a letter saying that they do need to move across from their legacy benefit on universal credit within 3 months. If they don't move across within the deadline that's set, then they won't get any sort of additional support. So could get some additional support if, for example, it's quite obvious that moving from your old legacy benefit on universal credit, if it would mean that you'd be financially worse off. So could be the case where maybe somebody might be claiming legacy benefits such as working tax credit or income support, and they might be receiving what we call like a disability premium on top of that. So these are additions that could have been added to old legacy benefits. They're not available on universal credit, so you could lose out on quite a bit by moving across. So if that is the case, you get what's called a transitional protection. So a transitional protection means that if you're going to be worse off moving over to universal credit, then they will make up that shortfall by providing you with a little bit of extra amount. Now, that only remains in place while your circumstances remain the same as they are. So once your circumstances do change, and inevitably they will, as you do move through that benefit, it will erode, and eventually you will kind of lose that transitional protection altogether and just receive what you would have normally received on universal credit there. So it's not intended to be a permanent fixture, just to help people when they do first move across to universal credit there. So that's that kind of managed migration. Of course, you do have things like natural migration, which means if your circumstances just change, it will usually trigger a move across to universal credit. So it could be that maybe you're on a joint claim on a legacy benefit and your partner moves out or has passed away. Or if somebody has kind of moved in, for example, you can't make a single claim anymore, then that would trigger like a natural migration onto universal credit. We also have voluntary migration. Basically just means that anybody can choose to move across if they want to. We would recommend, if that is the case, that anybody would have a full benefit check done, use a benefit calculator like the one we popped into the chat, just to see if you would be better off moving across to universal credit there. If not, try and stay on that legacy benefit for as long as possible. Of course, most people wouldn't really be able to do that now, unless maybe it's income-related employment and support allowance, in which case you do have a little bit of extra time on that benefit. So we do have a full handy breakdown at gov.uk. So I've got a link that I'll just pop into the chat on managed migration, so universal credit and managed migration. There's a little link that talks you through that as well. I'll see if I can get that into the chat for everyone as well there. Right, okay, so that does bring us now onto universal credit. So universal credit, we do have at Society Matters like a full day on universal credit. I think it does require a lot more time, and we'll go into this briefly. We'll talk at the end that we are going to be doing a further talk on universal credit just by itself for the Royal Voluntary Service. So that's going to be coming up. Hopefully, I think it's going to be next month. But we'll go through a little bit on universal credit now, just give you an idea of what it is and how to claim this as well. So what is universal credit? So as mentioned before, really like the biggest shake-up to the welfare benefit system since the Second World War. And it is a means tested benefit for those on a low income or are unemployed. Around about just over 40% of people who are claiming universal credit are employed, so they are in some kind of employment, and it's kind of helping to sort of subsidize or kind of boost their income a little bit while they're in employment. So the payment itself, now it is received for the whole household. So if you are part of a couple, you might be on a joint claim, and it's usually paid into one person's bank account, and that'll be the nominated claimant there. So the reason that universal credit was introduced was really to try and simplify the benefit system. I mean, how well it's done that, again, is kind of open to interpretation. But one of the ways that it does that is by providing one payment from the DWP. Previously, if you were on like multiple legacy benefits, for example, so you could be on working tax credit, child tax credit, which would be paid by HMRC, could be on housing benefit, in which case that would be paid by your local authority. So it could be like multiple different government departments that you need to speak to if you're having problems with all your benefits there. Now, with universal credit, it's just all under the umbrella of the DWP. So it's just the DWP that you would speak to there. Also, and maybe one of the more positive changes is the way the assessment period works on universal credit. So on all legacy benefits, there was a yearly assessment period, meaning that your benefits will be assessed yearly to make sure that you have been paid the correct amount. Now, could be instances where you're claiming an all legacy benefit and you're working at the same time. Now, if that is the case, then could be throughout that year, your working hours could have gone up and down, could have kind of fluctuated somewhat, which means at the end of the year, we did find quite a lot of people were hit with quite big like overpayments there, which they would have to pay back. Now, because universal credit is assessed monthly, it's essentially assessed in arrears on your previous month's income. So whatever you received the previous month will determine how much universal credit you're going to get this month. And that does cut down on those really kind of big overpayments at the end of the year. So, could be that maybe that previous month, your hours could have gone up or down, and then it'll be adjusted accordingly for the next month. You're not really going to get any kind of overpayment there in your benefits. Sometimes could be problematic if someone has received like a huge, maybe like a big bonus payment as part of their work that could completely wipe out your next month's universal credit. Also, people receiving like redundancy payments, they're all kind of classed as income. So there could be issues with that if someone has received a bonus payment, spent it all, and then has gotten to the end of the month, they haven't got anything left. It just means that you do have to be careful about sort of budgeting there as well. Also, with universal credit, everybody would have to sign up to a claimant commitment. So this is essentially a contract between yourself and your work coach, and it determines what you would have to do in order to continue receiving universal credit. So things like how many work searches you have to do would go into it, and it also determines which what's going to be claimant commitment, which conditionality group you would get placed into. So there's 4 different conditionality groups, and that determines what you have to do as part of claiming universal credit there. These are essentially the benefits we talked about before. There was like 6 legacy benefits in total, and these are the benefits that are being replaced by universal credit. So universal credit, it's a single benefit, but it is broken down into 6 different elements, which we're going to have a look at in a minute. So for example, housing benefit would become the housing element on universal credit. Child tax credit becomes like the child element on universal credit. Working tax credit has like a childcare component to it. So that essentially becomes the childcare element on universal credit. So essentially 6 elements. They do get kind of phased into that. But as mentioned, these are the benefits essentially that are being replaced by universal credit. Again, people have a little bit more time in income-related employment and support allowance, but most of these not really going to be seeing them at the end or after this year, really. So these are the elements of universal credit. So generally, it would depend on your own personal circumstances in regards to which element you are going to get. Probably not everyone's going to get all 6 elements of these. The standard element, now this is the one element that everybody would be able to receive on universal credit. And this is because it essentially pays for your day-to-day living costs. So your gas, your electric, your groceries, that type of thing. So everybody would receive something to pay for your kind of day-to-day costs there. So how it works is that it is subject to a taper rate. Now the taper rate is set at 55%, which means that for every pound that you earn, that's over your work allowance. If you do have a work allowance, then it will be reduced by 55 pence till eventually you might be working too many hours, so you won't be able to receive anything. You might be earning too much, you won't be able to receive anything at all there. So some people might be able to receive a work allowance. So if you have a limited capability for work, or if you're taking care of children, then you might be able to earn a little bit more before that taper rate kicks in. So I think we do have a link on the current work allowance as well. So that gives you a little bit of a breakdown at gov.uk in regards to what you could be earning before that is reduced there. So the other elements very much depend on your personal circumstances. So first of all, we have the child element. So this is if you do have any children. If you're responsible for a child, doesn't matter if you're the biological parent, could just means that basically you have responsibility for a child. So it could be that you are, auntie, uncle, guardian, just someone who is taking care of the child, then you would receive these payments. It's paid until the child is 16, but could be 20 if they're in what we call approved education. But that doesn't include any kind of higher education like university education, for example, usually kind of A-level or equivalent there. So there is the 2-child limit, something that is a source of controversy. It's been in the news quite a lot. Again, certain MPs trying to call for the 2-child limit to be scrapped, but you'd only get payments for your first 2 children. Unless you fall under any certain kind of exceptions, like if you've got children born in multiple births, like twins or triplets, there is the kind of rape clause as well. So if a child is being conceived as a result of rape or coercion, then there is a clause there where you can receive payments for additional children as well. But if you don't fall under any of these kind of exceptions that are included, then it's just that first 2 children that you receive payments for. So we have the housing element as well. So really similar to housing benefit. One of the main differences is that it's paid through the money itself is kind of paid directly to the claimant. So it's your responsibility to allocate those payments for your rent. So if you're renting through social housing or through a private landlord, then you might be able to receive these payments to pay for your rent. With housing benefit, that's paid directly to your landlord. So it's a little bit different in regards to how that works. Can be some exceptions if you have a gambling addiction, learning difficulties, or anything that might make it difficult for you to allocate those payments yourself, then it could be paid straight to your landlord, but you would need to ask for that from your work coach there. So we also have the sort of the bedroom tax when it comes to the housing element. Same way that exists for housing benefit there as well. So if you have 1 extra bedroom that's deemed than you need, then that could be reduced by maybe 14% for 1 extra bedroom, maybe 25% for 2 or more there as well. But you could ask for a discretionary housing payment to help sort of make up that shortfall if you do need it. So also we have the capability for work-related activity element. So you might be entitled to the limited capability for work-related activity if you have a disability or a long-term health condition that prevents you from working or carrying out any kind of work-related activity. If you are deemed to have a limited capability for work, now there's 2 separate sort of components to this. So there's limited capability for work and there's limited capability for work-related activity. Now, limited capability for work just means that you have a condition that might potentially get better over time. So you wouldn't necessarily receive payments for this. Just kind of means that you can't work at the moment. You wouldn't be expected to be an active job seeker. So you wouldn't have to kind of look for work or carry out any kind of, those kind of same kind of work searches, but you wouldn't receive additional payments. Now, with limited capability of work-related activity, this means that you would get additional sort of payments to help you out on universal credit, and these are going to be conditions where it's not expected that that you are going to recover from that condition, or it might be a long-term thing that might even get worse over time. So you would get those additional payments, and you wouldn't be classed as an active job seeker either. So this requires a work capability assessment. So that would be, so first of all, you have to ask for like a UC50 form that you'd have to fill out, and then based on that form, you have a work capability assessment where you'd be asked kind of like sort of questions face to face, and then depending on that would determine if you have a limited capability for work or a limited capability for work-related activity, or if you just don't receive anything at all, if you're deemed fit for work. They are going to be changing a little bit how those work capability assessments work as well. I think it's part of the reforms that they're looking into at the moment. So kind of moving the goalposts a little bit right now. So how that's going to look within a year's time or so, we'll have to kind of wait and see there as well. So also we have the carer element, so really similar to the carer's allowance, but it doesn't have that that earnings threshold. But everything else really kind of does remain the same. Childcare element would be for anyone who is working and paying for childcare. It would have to be approved childcare, so usually kind of offset approved, have to be like an approved childminder, or couldn't just be like an auntie, uncle, brother, sister who lives down the street. Would have to be like approved childcare there. And what would happen is you'd get 85% of your childcare cost covered, and you would pay the remaining amount there. So a bit of a lifeline, I think, to people who are paying a lot of money for childcare. I think the cost of childcare has really kind of shot up in the last 10, 20 years or so. So people paying a lot of money for childcare at the moment. So this is something that's a big concern for you if you claim universal credit. It's worth kind of claiming the childcare element. It is paid in arrears as well. So you would have to provide those payments up front, although you might be able to get a little bit of support with kind of grants and things if you're unable to kind of pay for those costs up front there as well. There's the flexible support fund that you could maybe look into to get a little bit of help with that, but that would be at the discretion of your work coach there as well. But it could be that you're in a situation as well where maybe you need the childcare element. So, for example, you might be working, but your partner isn't. Now, generally speaking, both you and your partner, if you're claiming as a joint claim on universal credit, will both have to be in employment to receive the childcare element. But there are some exceptions where maybe your partner is too ill to work and also too ill to look after the child at home. Then you could be an exception there. We could still get the childcare element. Could be that your partner is away from home in residential care, or perhaps kind of maybe in some form of custody as well. Then you could potentially have an exception with that. Or if your partner is caring for somebody else, as maybe a full-time carer, so they can't look after the child and they're not working, then in those circumstances, you could still get the childcare element even if your partner isn't working. But otherwise, yeah, you both have to be in some form of employment there as well. So lastly, just kind of going over some of the eligibility on universal credit. So first of all, wouldn't you receive universal credit if you are unemployed or working? So we mentioned that before, around about 40% of people are working and claiming universal credit at the same time. It is that single payment each month, which goes to the nominated claimant there. If you are in a coercive relationship, like maybe financially abusive, for example, then you could look to have those payments split. Otherwise, it would go to like one claimant. The rent is usually paid directly to the claimant as well. Again, unless there's a gambling addiction or something that would make a barrier, make it difficult for them to kind of pay their rent, then it could go straight to the landlord. And couples receive one payment per month to cover both claimants there as well. So again, split payments could potentially be an option there as well. When it comes to limited capability for work-related activity as well, so with that, there is just only one person would be able to claim that, even if you both have a disability or a health condition. So again, something that is quite controversial, works a little bit differently how it did on employment and support allowance, where you'd have like a joint claim. But yeah, a little bit different in regards to how that works. I think we do have a link that we can pop into the chat. If you're getting universal credit, if you're sick or disabled and have a limited capability for work-related activity, we can pop that in. Also, we have a link which just gives a bit of a breakdown for a link from Turn to Us. There's quite a good breakdown for those 6 elements of universal credit. Make sure we'll pop that into the chat for everyone to have a look at there as well. Also, I think that we should have some links on alternative payment arrangements as well for things like addiction. We'll see if we can dig that out and pop that into the chat for everyone as well there. Right, so that does bring us to the end there as well. So a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of all the kind of benefits, all 16 benefits available at the moment. So give everyone a little bit of an update of what's coming up. So we are going to be running like a monthly course here for the Royal Voluntary Service. Which courses we are going to be running now? They are still to be confirmed with a few of those, although in December we are going to be running an hour-long session on universal credit itself. So we'll go into a lot more detail on universal credit. So if you're interested in what you've heard today, pop back and we'll go through that with you as well. And we are going to be announcing further courses as we do run through today. These are just a few open courses that we have over at Society Matters. So if you're able to log into our website, we'll bring the website up in a minute. This is what we've got coming up over really the next few months. I think we've got these listed all the way up until kind of February there. So these are open courses that anybody could sign up to. Just have a check on the website. You can see what's coming up. But yeah, this is everything that we've got coming up. Sorry, disappeared off the slide a little bit there. But really up until sort of February there. So anyone interested, pop onto our website, www.societymatters.cic.com, and you'll be able to see a full list of all of our courses available there as well. So this is everything that we've covered today. So again, went through that overview of the 16 current welfare benefits being claimed in the UK at the moment. Looked at some of the eligibility and the criteria for those benefits as well, and some of the factors that might affect those claims in the future there. Right, so I think that's everything. Oops, sorry, I think there was one more link that I was going to mention to pop in there. See if we've got a copy of it. I think it's for yeah, so alternative payment arrangements for things like addiction. I think one of our facilitators, if you've got that, if you can pop that in, if it's not in there, that's all right. But you can still get that link at gov.uk. But we'll see if we can pop that link into the chat for you there. So yeah, so does anyone have any questions on anything that we've covered, or any burning questions when it comes to welfare benefits that anyone would like to know? Just pop any questions into the chat, and I'll do my best to answer any of those for you there. Right, and while they're doing that, I'll just try and find that link that I'm not sure if we managed to pop that in. Oh, also, there's quite a helpful link. We have a help to claim service, so anybody who's struggling to make a claim for universal credit, I'll see if I can pop that link into the chat for everyone as well. So this is a service that's funded by the government, but it's a benefit. Sorry, it's a line that we run at Citizens Advice Gateshead. So anyone who's struggling to maybe set up a claim for universal credit, it's quite helpful. We'll see if we can drop that into the chat for everyone as well. But yeah, but any questions, anyone, anything anyone would like to know before we end the session there? Okay, just looking through the chat, don't think I can see any questions coming up. I'll just run back over just to make sure that I haven't missed any. Yeah, think that's everything. So yeah, if there's no questions, we'll end it there. But again, follow those links. So hopefully they'll be a little bit helpful for you if there's any further information that you do need to know. And again, watch the space, have a look to see kind of what sessions we've got coming up in the future there. But thanks very much, everyone, for taking part today. Really appreciate your participation, and hopefully we'll see everybody again in the future with some of our other sessions there as well. Okay.